Hi, Leo.
Hi.
Welcome to join us. Today we'll talk about some inside stories of creating KD9 and your perspectives on design and share with our audience. Okay. Let's from the beginning. From design to production, what are the standout features and consideration on technology and aesthetics for KD9?
Yeah, the consideration around KD started from just the general needs and the feel that he's going after from a performance standpoint. So wanted to really get after a fit that was, really tight, conforming, but also felt really natural so that he can still move and move freely, and then also getting after a sensation underfoot that's really responsive and gives some nice bounce to a step, and for me, looking at the possibilities from innovation and technology standpoint that gets that best feel, and so looking at sort of the bringing in the fly knit into the upper, you can see the way that it kind of goes over the whole foot and just contains it, but still allows you to move naturally, and then improving upon the zoom, full-length zoom that we started in the 8, and then making it even better now for the 9. His perfect feel for a shoe at the time was the 8, and he really loved the way it felt. It was, so then how do you make that better, when he already said something was pretty close to perfect in terms of feel. So we looked at how we can make the zoom even more responsive and more that bouncy kind of feel by sort of increasing the fabric inside the airbag to taper from 16 millimeters in the heel to about 10 in the forefoot. Versus on the 8, it was a consistent 10 millimeters from heel to toe with foam on top of it. So this one you really feel directly the instant feel of that zoom sensation, The midsole that's actually around it is actually just kind of a carrier for the zoom bag, and actually fills out some of the gaps in the sort of the gaps on the bottom to fit to the upper. When you actually look at the midsole part alone, actually there's a hole in the front underneath your toes, on the balls of your feet, and also underneath the heel. So you're sitting directly on the bag itself.
From designer standpoint, what would you like to communicate with the consumer through KD9? Or is there any inner meaning or inner message behind the design?
Behind the inner meaning, I don't know if there's an inner meaning behind the design. I think it's just, we're just trying to build the best, getting after that really natural sensation with the upper and just having a really smooth, responsive ride, and I think it's just a feel that people really love and maybe haven't had in a while, and so now, just even hearing some of the feedback on the 9 now, people are really loving it, and just that amazing sensation of the zoom, has been positively received. From a design standpoint, I think I was just trying to push something a little bit different than we've done with KD. I think he's evolved as a man, and as a player, and his style's changed over the years too. So I just want to make sure that kind of capturing that evolution, When you look at the design, in my opinion, it's a little bit more sophisticated than where we've been in the past. And what I love about it is there's like a rawness to the design, that like a raw, natural kind of feel to it, but combined with like technology, innovation, and so a little bit of future plus raw, and so I think that makes for a different expression that we haven't seen in his product for a while. So,
would you please describe KD and KD9 using 3 keywords individually?
Let me see. Hybrid is one. Effortless, and third one's always the hardest because you have to choose now. Hybrid, effortless, smooth.
Looking back at 9 or 10 years relationship on collaboration, would you give us some insight on working with KD? What are the most memorable moments or interesting stories?
Yeah, over the years, we've gotten to know each other pretty well. We started out basically Nike basketball together as rookies, He was a rookie coming into the NBA and I was a rookie coming into Nike basketball. I was in running prior to that. And then, so we started together and, I think as with any kind of relationship when you first start, it's, you have to really get to know each other and it takes a lot of sort of research, not research, but yeah, there's some research, but just, you got to break the ice a little bit, and so that took time. And I've always told him from product standpoint, I'm like, you will never hurt my feelings if you said, I hate this design, Actually, I love it. I love it when people hate my designs because then it gives me at least some boundaries, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, I took it that far and he hated it. Versus like, if you just like things all day long, then it's hard to like guide it somewhere, Like, it just doesn't feel like it's enough information. Like when you get told I don't like it, oh, okay, I now know a limit, So I've always encouraged him to be super vocal and being like the kind of respectful guy that he is. Like he always, didn't, I don't know if he wanted to hurt my feelings or something. So like he would never like disrespect me and say like, oh, I hate it, whatever. But he would kind of think about it a little bit and then come back to me later and say like, yeah, I wasn't feeling that, So it's good. It's evolved over the years, and I feel like we're at a point now where it doesn't take. It's a little bit more efficient, and I don't need to like just sit down and interview him. Like it's more natural, It's a natural interaction where it's more like small conversation, observation, and I think we're connected that way, And I'll show him a design, and I think he'll a lot of times be in sync with that. We'll be kind of talking the same language. So, and that just takes time,
You've been traveling with KD recently. Does that help you or come up with more ideas for upcoming?
For sure, I don't know if it, because it's, again, me, I'm not interviewing him like whenever I'm with him. It's more casual, so it's not like I'm getting a direct thing that I can apply right away, a direct insight that I can apply right away. It's more like something that may sit in my brain for a little while and I'll think about it and then store it away and then it'll come back somehow, So, yeah, I think in the summertime is usually the time when he's the most free of, not thinking about, the next game that's coming, and he can think about something other than basketball. And so that's the best time I think that I've had interactions with him, and long interactions like being here with him last summer, being in Europe and then all that. So, or, like going to wherever he's at, a camp or whatever. And so we'll spend time afterwards and just hang out and just being around each other and stuff, so.
You used to intern and work briefly at the Nike Run department. Does that experience affect your design process in terms of designing basketball shoes? Because some consumers feel that there are similarities between running shoes and recent KDs, especially like 6 to 9. Is there a connection?
No. It's funny that like I came from running and I was doing some stuff that I was really proud of at the time. Like after I kind of took over the Nike Free line after Eric Avard designed the first 5.0 and 4.0. I kind of worked on a bunch of them after that, and it kind of woke me up in design a little bit. Like it kind of made me think completely differently. And at the time I was, I think, designing a lot of very spaceship looking kind of shoes that like just weren't wearable, and maybe like just adding too much stuff into it. And what I loved was about Free was it was the minimalist approach. And so then I was kind of coming off of that and going into Nike basketball. And my instant thing was like, oh, I'm gonna bring Free running into basketball. And I think that was the wrong approach. And I had to just instantly shut that process down and that thinking down, and basically say, you know what, I'm gonna start fresh. I'm not gonna think about that stuff. I'll log it back in my brain somewhere, and if there's experiences and insights that can pertain to particular projects and whatever, I'll bring them back out. But I needed to start fresh. I needed to start with going to the lab, our science guys who know everything about the motions of basketball. And I needed to start there versus bring the running stuff with me. And so that's what I did. And I basically talked to all those guys and learned everything I could about the nuances of the motions of basketball and stuff like that, and started there. So I know a lot of people said that the KD8 probably looked like a running shoe. I think it's just a matter of it's a low top and it was a one-piece kind of woven upper, and so I can see the connection, but it was, if you compare that to an actual running shoe, they feel very different though,
What's your muse and how do you get inspired doing design work? Any tips?
I don't know. I think what gets me excited is just problem solving a lot of times. And it's not a particular one type of product or like some people get into cars and the inspiration from that. I don't really do that. I'm more just like the problem solving aspect, like, hey, what are things I can make better functionally and even aesthetically, So, but then, there are just random moments that I will see something like, oh, that could be a really cool traction design, that could be a really cool upper detail,
So basically it's from the daily life, right?
Yeah, a little bit daily life, and there are things that KD will say, like on the 5, he was really inspired by the Mercedes SLS that he had, and I didn't want to design a shoe that looked like a car, but I wanted to kind of take some of the essence of what that car was and put it into that,
You mentioned that designing a pair of sneakers is to cater the needs of athletes and consumers. How do you find a balance between the two?
I think finding a balance is kind of like the art and the science part, right? And so I think in a shoe, especially a basketball shoe, the beauty and the art of it is equally important as the functional part of the shoe. It has to perform, right? And none of our athletes want a shoe compromise necessarily the performance, but they want it to look good, And so I think when you talk about the athlete versus the consumer, the athlete wants, obviously it to work, and then the consumer wants it to be a part of that, but they may not be. I'm assuming you're saying the consumer is the one that's not playing basketball or something, right? They want to be a part of the culture, but they want it to look cool, So it's kind of like basketball players in that they want both,
Any words of wisdom for upcoming sneaker designers? Any suggestions?
Yeah, words of wisdom for upcoming sneaker designers. It's definitely like a tough competitive world out there for that now, and I think I personally kind of feel like what happens a lot of times is they don't always see behind the curtains of the actual design process that happens with design at Nike, right? So a lot of times what they'll see is like a really bad sketch that I did or something, and think that's design. It's not. And I think real design is when you have a really bad sketch, you're able to then make it into a beautiful drawing, or you make something out of that bad sketch, like you cobble up something, actually physically make it. Then you figure out what's wrong with that, and then you go and correct it again. And it's a lot of back and forth. And a lot of people think that there's an instant, here's a sketch and that's done. It's not, you have to kind of go back a lot of times, and you have to go through hundreds and hundreds of sketches sometimes, or hundreds and hundreds of samples to get to that design. So I think people may not see that part of it and just say, hey, I'm done with this one sketch. And I guess my advice is to keep exploring, keep trying, keep pushing it, and don't settle for that first sketch. You know, maybe it is the first sketch sometimes, but you know, it's always good to keep your mind open and keep exploring and pushing things, you know.
The next question. In your wildest dream, regardless of the potential, what your pair of futuristic shoes would be? For example, like Air Max in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would probably be making you jump higher or fly. You know, I think that's the auto lace thing's super cool too. So we can have that included in the shoe. So auto lace and it'll fly. And yeah, so I think that'd be cool because I think personally for me, I'd love to be able to dunk and on a regulation rim. So I think the ability to jump higher and fly.
Right. Thanks so much for your time.
Cool. Yeah.